she was already late. Not a little late. The kind of late that sits in your chest like a stone and makes your heels hit the pavement harder than they should. Adaeze Obi had exactly 4 minutes to get from the corner of Gangnam-dero to the tallest building in the district, fix her face, walk in like she belonged, and convince the most feared corporation in Seoul that she was exactly who they needed. 4 minutes, she ran. Seoul moved around her the way Seoul always did. Fast, beautiful, indifferent. Screens the size of buildings flashed advertisements in Korean she was still learning to read. Taxi horns layered over train sounds. People in sharp suits moved like water around stone, never stopping, never slowing. And Adaeze ran through all of it, her curly hair bouncing under the weight of the morning, her simple navy dress doing its best to look like a choice and not a compromise. She needed to check her face. She reached into her bag. No mirror. She checked again. Receipts, a pen. Her mother's prayer card. Always there, always at the bottom. No mirror. Seriously? She stopped at the edge of the pavement. Her eyes moved quickly across the street, past the flower stand, past the glass-fronted convenience store, and then she saw it, parked at the curve. A car so black it looked like it had swallowed light, matte finish. The kind of car that doesn't need a logo, because the logo would be redundant. Long, quiet, and absolutely still. Adaeze looked at it. She looked at her phone. 8:57 a.m. Interview, 9 a.m. She looked at the car again. She walked toward it. She told herself she only needed 30 seconds. She told herself whoever was inside was probably on a phone call, looking the other way, or simply not paying attention. She leaned toward the tinted window and found her face staring back at her. Dark mirror, honest light. Okay, focus. She smoothed her edges. She pressed her lipstick even. She tapped color back into her cheeks with 2 fingers and straightened the collar of her dress. She could feel something. Not quite a gaze, more like a pressure. But she told herself that was just nerves. Adaeze Obi did not let nerves win. Her mother had taught her that in Lagos, standing at a bus stop with 3 children and no umbrella in the rain. You stand straight, you keep moving, you do not let the weather read your face. She winked at herself in the glass. You're ready.
Sure.
Don't let anyone scare you today. She stepped back, and for exactly 1 second, one unguarded, weightless second, her eyes traced the shadow on the other side of the tinted window. A face, still, watching. She held her breath for half a beat, then turned and walked. Fast, chin up, heels deliberate on the pavement. She didn't look back. Welcome to Afro-Korean Noir. Hey, you're in the right spot. Dive in for vibes, stories, and content you won't forget. Subscribe and join the journey. Let's make it epic. Inside the car, Chairman Kang Jisoo had not moved. He had been sitting in the back seat reading the morning's acquisition reports when the sound of heels had slowed outside his window. His driver had gone quiet. And then a face had appeared. Not looking at him, looking at herself, in the glass of his door. Kang Jisoo was the kind of man who made entire boardrooms cold when he entered. Reporters called him the Stone of Seoul. His employees did not make eye contact unless spoken to. His competitor, CEOs, sent their deputies to meetings instead of attending themselves, because being in the same room as Kang Jisoo for more than an hour had a way of making grown men forget their own talking points. Nobody used his car as a mirror. He watched her fix her lipstick. He watched her smooth her hair. He watched her tilt her face left, then right, then nod at herself with something that could only be described as quiet confidence. Then she had leaned back, winked at her own reflection, and said something to herself that his lip reading could only partially catch. "Don't let anyone scare you." And then she was gone. Jisoo sat very still. His driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "Chairman, the meeting is—" "I know." His voice was flat, practiced. "Drive." The car moved into traffic. Jisoo looked at the window she had leaned against. The glass held no trace of her, tinted too dark for fingerprints to show. But something else remained, something he would not name yet because Kang Jisoo was not in the habit of naming things he didn't understand. He looked back at his acquisition report. He read the same line 4 times. "Many people watch but forget to subscribe. Please take a moment now to subscribe. It's free, but it helps this channel grow greatly." The lobby of SJ Global Group was designed to make you feel small. That was not an accident. Kang Jisoo had approved the architect's vision personally. 40 feet of white marble ceiling, light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a reception desk long enough to land a small aircraft. Every surface communicated the same message. "You are a guest here. Act accordingly." Adaeze stepped through the revolving doors and looked up. She swallowed once. Just once. "Walk like you belong, anywhere you go." Her mother's voice. Lagos kitchen. 6 years ago. Adaeze had been 18 and terrified about her first university interview. Her mother had stood her in front of the bathroom mirror. An actual mirror, she thought bitterly, and said those words while adjusting her collar. "Walk like you belong, anywhere you go." She walked to reception. She gave her name. She was directed to the elevator. She rode it up alone, watching floor numbers climb, feeling her heartbeat trying to outpace them. The doors opened. The meeting room was glass on 3 sides. Seoul spread behind it like a painting. 3 people sat at a long table, 2 managers in dark suits, 1 empty chair between them. Adaeze bowed politely, introduced herself, and sat where she was directed. The managers were professional, careful. They asked her about her background, her experience, her reason for relocating from Lagos to Seoul. She answered honestly. She always answered honestly. It was the only strategy she trusted. And then the door opened. The room changed. She didn't understand at first why everyone at the table sat differently. Spines straighter, eyes forward, hands flat. She turned toward the door, following their gaze. A tall man entered. Black suit. Not the nervous black suit of someone trying to look important. The absolute, settled black suit of someone who had never questioned their own authority in their life. Sharp jaw, eyes that moved across the room with the economy of a man who never looked at anything he didn't intend to look at. And then those eyes landed on her. Adaeze's heart stopped. Not from the authority of his presence, though that was real, filling the room like temperature. It stopped because she knew his face, the shadow behind the tinted glass, the face on the other side of her mirror. He was inside the car. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Chairman Kang Jisoo stopped walking. For exactly 2 seconds, neither of them moved. The managers looked between them, confused by the pause. Then Jisoo sat down, slowly. And something happened to his face that the managers had never seen happen before in a professional setting. He smiled. Not wide, not warm, just the edge of something. A small, controlled acknowledgement. He crossed one leg over the other, opened the folder in front of him, and spoke without looking up. "Miss Adaeze." His Korean-accented English was precise, unhurried. "You seem very comfortable around expensive things." The managers exchanged a glance they thought was invisible. Adaeze's hands were flat on her thighs under the table. She could feel her pulse in her palms, but her face held. "I borrow what I need," she said, "and I always leave things exactly as I found them." Silence. Jisoo looked up from the folder. "Why should I hire you?" She could have flattered him. She had prepared answers that would have done that. Smooth, professional phrases about alignment and vision and contribution. But sitting across from this man who had watched her talk to herself through tinted glass, flattery felt like wearing a costume. She sat straighter. "Because I work hard and I don't pretend. Big buildings don't intimidate me. Important people don't silence me. If I make a mistake, I fix it. If I don't know something, I learn it. And I don't waste anyone's time, including my own." One of the managers coughed. Jisoo studied her, not quickly, with the patience of someone who had learned that the things worth understanding took time. "What if I'm difficult to work with? Then I'll still do my job." The room held its breath. Jisoo stood. He picked up his tablet. He walked toward the door, and just before he reached it, he stopped and looked back. "You're hired," he paused. "Not because you impressed me, because you were real." His eyes held hers for a half second. Seoul needs more real people. The door closed behind him. Adaeze sat very still. Then her legs very quietly began to shake under the table. She started the following Monday. No gold, no performance, just Adaeze, her notebook, her questions, her refusal to shrink. The office of SJ Global operated on a system of invisible rules. You didn't speak to the chairman unless spoken to. You didn't make suggestions in meetings unless invited. You didn't laugh too loudly, move too freely, or take up space that hadn't been assigned to you. These rules weren't written anywhere. They didn't need to be. They lived in the way people held themselves, in the half-second delay before anyone spoke. Adaeze didn't know these rules, or rather, she saw them, recognized them for what they were, and decided they didn't apply to her. Not out of arrogance, out of the particular freedom that comes from having traveled 10,000 kilometers and started over. When you've already done the hardest thing, the smaller fears stop having teeth. She greeted the security guards by name by Wednesday. She helped an intern carry a stack of files on Thursday and didn't mention it to anyone. She asked questions in team briefings that made senior managers shift uncomfortably, not because the questions were rude, but because they were the questions everyone else had been carefully not asking. Kang Jisoo noticed everything. He told himself he was simply observing a new employee's performance. That was his responsibility. He observed everyone. He kept a precise internal record of who was efficient, who was reliable, who required correction. He was not keeping a record of Adaeze Obi specifically. And yet, he noted the moment she picked up his pen. He had dropped it in the corridor outside the boardroom. An unusual occurrence, a small loss of precision, and before anyone else could react, she had bent down, picked it up, and placed it in his hand. "Here you go, sir." Their fingers touched. Jisoo pulled his hand back. Not quickly, that would have been telling. At measured speed. He nodded once and continued walking. But the warmth of her fingers stayed in his palm for the rest of the afternoon, like something he couldn't set down. The trouble arrived in the form of senior staff member Minji. Adaeze came to her desk one morning to find a thick stack of files that were not hers. Minji stood beside them, arms folded, expression arranged into something between boredom and contempt. "Fix these," he said. New staff helps. Adaeze looked at the files. She looked at Minjae. These aren't mine, she said, not loudly, clearly. New people assist with overflow. I'm happy to assist with overflow that belongs to my department. These don't. She met his eyes. I don't carry other people's mistakes, Minjae. His jaw tightened. Do you understand where you are? Yes, she said simply. At work. Their voices had risen just slightly, enough. The open office floor had gone still. That specific stillness of people pretending very hard to type while listening to every word. And then the stillness deepened further, into a different quality entirely. The chairman had entered. Everyone bowed. Minjae straightened. Jisoo's eyes moved to the files on Adaeze's desk, then to Minjae, then to Adaeze, who was the only person in the room whose posture hadn't changed. What is this? Minjae smiled carefully. Just guiding the new staff chairman? Adaeze spoke before she could think better of it. They're not my mistakes, sir. The room held its breath so completely it was almost audible. Jisoo looked at Minjae for a long moment, long enough to be uncomfortable. Take responsibility for your own work. Minjae bowed deeply. Yes, Chairman. Jisoo walked away without looking at Adaeze again. But as he entered his glass office and sat down, something had settled warm inside his chest, quietly, without permission. That same week, Park Sun-woo introduced himself. Junior manager, smart, easy with his smiles, the kind of person the office liked instinctively. He appeared at Adaeze's desk with a genuine question about a marketing file and stayed for 15 minutes because their conversation moved naturally from the file to the strategy behind it to what she had observed about the Seoul consumer market in her first weeks. Jisoo saw it from his office. He saw Sun-woo lean closer to point at her screen. He saw Adaeze laugh at something, the kind of laugh that wasn't performed, the kind that caught in her throat slightly before it became sound. He saw Sun-woo smile back with the uncomplicated ease of someone who had no idea he was being watched by the chairman of the company through glass walls. Jisoo pressed his intercom. Adaeze, office, now. She came. She always came quickly, he had noticed, not because she was afraid, but because she didn't believe in wasting time. You're busy, he said when she entered. Yes, sir, with the marketing analysis. Do you need Sun-woo's assistance with that? Adaeze tilted her head slightly. We work better in teams. Something moved in Jisoo's jaw. I prefer you work with me on cross-department materials. She looked at him for a beat. Okay, sir. He didn't understand why his chest felt lighter when she agreed. He told himself it was about workflow, about efficiency, about the fact that she had proven herself more capable than most of his senior staff, and it made organizational sense to direct her output properly. He told himself that. He believed approximately none of it. If you're enjoying this content and it adds value to you, kindly subscribe. It helps this channel reach more people across Europe and the world. It rained over Seoul that Thursday. The kind of rain that doesn't build, it simply arrives, full and certain, like it had always been waiting just above the city and finally decided to come down. The office windows ran with silver. The city below became soft and impressionist, all smeared lights and moving shapes. By 9 in the evening, only 2 people remained on the 43rd floor. Adaeze was finishing a report that she had refused to leave incomplete. She sat at her desk with her shoes off, her second cup of cold coffee beside her keyboard, typing with the focused patience of someone who had decided the work mattered more than the hour. Footsteps. she turned. Kang Jisoo stood at the end of the corridor, jacket over his arm, looking at her with an expression she had not seen on him before. Not coldness, something closer to surprise, like he had expected the floor to be empty and found instead that it wasn't, and the discovery had shifted something in him. "You're still here," he said. "So are you." He walked closer. The sound of rain filled the quiet between them. He stopped beside her desk and looked at the screen, then at her. "You left your country to come here." "Yes." Was it frightening? She considered the question honestly, the way she considered all questions. "Yes," she said, "but staying afraid is worse than moving through fear." He looked away toward the window. Rain drew lines down the glass. "My life taught me to be cold," he said. It came out differently than he intended, less like a statement, more like something he had just discovered was true. Not careful, cold. Adaeze looked at him. "That sounds like a lonely way to live." He didn't answer, but the words stayed with him long after the elevator had carried her down, and the rain kept falling over a city that was used to people carrying things they didn't say out loud. The next morning, Sunwoo was at her desk again. This had become a pattern, brief, professional, entirely reasonable. They were working on adjacent projects. Their conversations were productive. Adaeze liked him the way she liked most people who were genuinely kind without performing it. Jisoo walked past. He stopped. "Everyone." The word was quiet and landed like a door closing. "Mandatory department review. Conference room B. Now." Sunwoo bowed and left. Others followed. Adaeze gathered her notebook. Inside the conference room, Jisoo led the review with his usual precision. But 3 times in 40 minutes, his eyes moved to Adaeze unprompted. The 3rd time, he stopped mid-sentence. "Adaeze, the campaign timeline. What do you see wrong with it?" Every face turned. This was not how reviews worked. New staff did not get pulled into chairman-level analysis discussions. Adaeze looked at the screen, looked at the numbers. "The timing is wrong," she said. "The market is tired right now, oversaturated from the quarter's end. Launch in 3 weeks, and you'll get half the return. Wait 6, and people will be ready to listen again." Silence. A senior manager opened his mouth. Jisoo held up one hand. The manager closed his mouth. "Adjust the timeline," Jisoo said. 6 weeks. He closed his folder. Meeting adjourned. As people filed out, Sunwoo caught up to Adaeze in the corridor. "I have never seen him take advice from someone in their first month," he said quietly with genuine amazement. Adaeze smiled. "He didn't take advice. He agreed with an observation. There's a difference. To him? Probably." Sunwoo laughed. Down the corridor, through glass walls, Kang Jisoo watched them laugh and felt the fire in his chest move from warm to something sharper. He turned back to his desk. He put his pen down. He picked it up. "Why does this bother me?" He knew why. He had known since the rain conversation, since the pen, since the interview. He simply was not ready to say it to himself yet in language that was clear. But the thing about fire is that it eventually stops waiting for permission. The newspaper story broke on a Friday. A photograph. Jisoo walking Adaeze to his car outside SJ Global's lobby. The angle was sharp, the implication obvious, the caption precise and cruel. "Cold King of Seoul. Is the foreign employee his newest acquisition?" The story was 3 paragraphs. It didn't need to be longer. Seoul's business press knew how to do damage efficiently. By Monday morning, the office had the tight, airless quality of a room where everyone is pretending not to know something. Adaeze sat at her desk and felt the weight of 100 pairs of eyes that weren't meeting hers. Her inbox had 3 messages from HR. Sunwoo stopped by briefly, face carefully neutral, and said only, "Be careful today." She was called to the boardroom at 11. Not Jisoo's office. The boardroom. The full table. 4 senior directors and the company's legal counsel. They were professional. They were even kind in the way institutions are kind when they have decided something and need you to agree with it quietly. The recommendation, they called it a recommendation, was a temporary reassignment, a different department, a different floor, a period of distance that would allow the narrative to settle. Adaeze sat with her hands flat on the table. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said. "We understand that, Miss Adaeze." "Then I'd like to hear this recommendation from Chairman Kang directly." Silence. The legal counsel shifted. "That may not be. I'll wait." Jisoo had seen the story. He had read it once, put his phone face down on his desk, and sat for 4 minutes doing nothing, which, for a man who had not done nothing for longer than 30 seconds in 15 years, was significant. Then he had called his communications director and spent an hour on containment strategy. Then he had signed off on the boardroom meeting. And then he had sat in his office and done nothing again. You told her to keep being real. Now the world punished her for it. He walked to the boardroom at 11:45. He entered. The directors stood. He looked at Adaeze, who looked back at him with the same eyes she had turned on him through the tinted glass, not afraid, not performing bravery, just present, steady. He felt something break open in his chest. "Leave us," he said. The directors filed out. The legal counsel hesitated. Jisoo looked at him once. He left. In the empty boardroom, Jisoo sat down across from Adaeze. The city moved outside the glass behind him. "They want me to move you," he said. "I know. If I don't, the story grows." "I know that too." He looked at his hands. "I could protect the company." "Yes. Or—" He stopped. Adaeze waited. She was good at waiting. It was a skill she had developed on her mother's veranda in Lagos, watching rain collect in the yard, learning that silence wasn't empty. Jisoo looked up. "When you used my car window," he said, "you didn't see me as a chairman. You didn't see me as a threat or an opportunity or a problem to manage." He paused. "You saw yourself. And somehow that—" He pressed his fingers briefly to his chest. "That was the first time someone stood next to my world without adjusting themselves for it." Adaze's throat tightened. "I have spent 15 years making this company untouchable," he continued. "I made myself untouchable in the process. Cold, they call me. Useful, I called myself." He met her eyes. "And then you walked into my boardroom in a navy dress and told me big people don't scare you, and I—" He exhaled slowly. "I don't know what to do with that, with you. I only know I'm not willing to move you." The city hummed 43 floors below. "Then don't," Adaeze said quietly. "The story—" "Let me answer it," he frowned. "What?" "Let me talk to the communications team. I'll give one statement, not about us, about my work, about what I've done here in 2 months. Let my record answer the story." She held his gaze. "And you stand beside it. Not in front, not behind. Beside." Jisoo looked at her for a long time. Something in his face moved. The slow, quiet movement of a wall that has been standing for so long it has forgotten it was built and is only now remembering that walls are a choice. "Okay," he said. It was the first time Kang Jisoo had said okay to anything in a room where he hadn't made the decision himself. This channel is not just about videos, it's about community. If you're watching from America or anywhere around the world, subscribe and be part of this family. The statement worked. Not immediately. Nothing in business journalism resolves immediately. But within 2 weeks, the story had lost its oxygen. Adaeze's work record was clean and substantive. Her colleagues quietly but consistently confirmed her competence. And Kang Jisoo stood beside it without explanation or apology, which was itself a statement that Seoul's business press understood perfectly. On the Thursday evening 3 weeks after the boardroom, Jisoo sent a single message to her phone. Rooftop, after the building closes. She came. Seoul spread below them like a field of light, amber and white and the deep red of signs she could now read slowly, haltingly, with the particular pride of a language earned word by word. A cool wind moved across the roof. The sky was clear in the way Seoul skies rarely were. Open, dark, full of stars doing their best against the city's glow. Jisoo stood near the edge with his jacket open, looking at his city with the expression of a man who has looked at the same view 1,000 times and is only now truly seeing it. He heard her footsteps and turned. "You came," he said. "You asked." He looked at her for a moment. "I'm not good at this," he said. The admission sat plainly between them, offered without performance or apology. "I was taught that needing things was a weakness. Showing things was dangerous. I built my life around being unreachable." He paused. "And then you stood at my car window and talked to yourself, and I—" He made a small, helpless gesture. "I haven't been unreachable since." Adaeze walked toward him slowly. The city lights moved in the wind's reflection off the glass barrier at the roof's edge. "I came to Seoul for work," she said. "For growth. For the version of myself I could only become by leaving the place that already knew me." She stopped a step from him. "I didn't come for love." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "But love," she continued, "doesn't ask where it's convenient." He breathed out. "Jisoo." She used his name without the title. The first time. His eyes changed. "I see you," she said. "Not the chairman, not the cold king. The man who left bread at my desk before I arrived. The man who defended me in the corridor without making it about himself. The man who said okay in a boardroom when every instinct was telling him to protect the institution instead of the person." She held his gaze. "I see someone who learned to be strong alone because he had to, and I think he's ready to learn something different." The wind moved between them. Jisoo stepped closer, close enough that the city behind her became less important than her face. "I think about you in the morning," he said quietly. "I look for you when I enter the office. I felt jealous of Sunwoo in ways I had no right to feel, and I didn't understand what it meant until the rain." He placed one hand carefully over his own chest. "I don't fully understand love yet, but I understand you. And I know the difference between a full life and a comfortable one, and I have been living the comfortable one for 15 years. Adaeze's eyes were bright. "Adaeze." His voice dropped to its quietest register. "I love you, not quickly, not simply, but completely, in the way that has no withdrawal strategy." She laughed softly. That real laugh, the one that caught in her throat first, and the sound of it did something irreversible to the last guarded room in Kang Jisoo's chest. She stepped forward and placed her palm flat against his chest. His heart was beating fast. She could feel it. You watched me fix my lipstick? Through tinted glass, she said. And you hired me anyway. I hired you because you defended me without being asked. It was the right thing. You left bread on my desk. He was almost smiling. You work better when you've eaten. Kang Jisoo. She looked into his eyes. You didn't scare me that first day. You intrigued me. And every day since you have given me a reason to stay. She let her hand press slightly more firmly against his chest. I love you too, in the way that wasn't in my plan and turned out to be the whole point. He exhaled, relief, joy, something vast and releasing, like a building finally setting down its own weight. He lifted her hand from his chest carefully, held it in both of his, and brought it to his lips, not rushed, not loud, deliberate the way Kang Jisoo did everything, but deliberate now in the service of something warm instead of something armored. From a car mirror, she said softly, laughing. To a rooftop, he said against her fingers. Below them, Seoul moved. Cars and lights and 10 million people doing the remarkable ordinary work of being alive. Above them, the stars persisted against the city's argument. And on the 44th floor, against the cool Seoul sky, the girl who had borrowed a CEO's window for a mirror found herself reflected in his eyes. And the cold king of Seoul discovered that the strongest thing he had ever built was this: 2 hands, held, choosing each other in the dark above a city that never stopped. They kept it quiet at the office. Not secret, quiet, professional, the way you carry something precious in a busy city, not hidden, just held close. Adaeze still arrived early, still greeted the guards, still asked the questions no one else asked in meetings. Jisoo still ran the boardroom with the precision that had made him what he was. But now when he entered a room, his eyes found her first. And when she looked up from her desk and across the open floor to his glass office, he didn't look away anymore. Sunwoo noticed. He said nothing. But one morning, he left a small congratulatory sticky note on Adaeze's monitor that read simply, "He smiles now. That's your fault." She laughed so hard she had to cover her mouth. One evening, weeks later, Jisoo drove her to the street where it had begun. The matte black car, the exact stretch of pavement, the building's shadow falling the same way it had fallen that September morning when she was late and terrified and determined not to show it. He parked. They stood beside the car together. She reached out and touched the window and found her own reflection, older by a season now, looking back at her with an expression she barely recognized. She looked happy. "You didn't just borrow a mirror here," Jisoo said beside her. She turned to him. "You showed me what I was missing." He took her hand. "I had everything Seoul says a man should want, and I was empty in the way that expensive things are empty, perfectly maintained, perfectly still." He looked at her. "You came and made noise in my quiet. You brought your warmth into my cold rooms. You made me remember that power is only worth anything if there is someone you want to use it to protect." She leaned into his side. He held her there on the pavement, Seoul moving past them without stopping, the way Seoul always did. "My mother told me to walk like I belong," Adaeze said quietly. "Anywhere I go." Jisoo pressed his lips against her hair. "She was right," he said. "You belong everywhere, but I'm glad you stopped here." And the city carried them forward, not into the perfect ending of a story, but into the ordinary, extraordinary continuation of 2 people who had found each other in the brief, accidental space between a luxury car and a woman with no mirror, and decided quietly and completely to stay. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who deserves to feel something beautiful today. New stories every week, right here